Welcome back, Faithful Politics listeners and viewers. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, I am your political host, Will Wright, and I'm joined by your faithful host, Pastor Josh Bertram. How's it going, Josh?
Doing well, Will. Thanks.
Hey, and this week we have with us Ryan Binkley. He is the president and CEO of Generational Group located in Richardson, Texas. He's also a lead pastor of a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church called Create Church that he founded along with his wife, Ellie. But more importantly, he is a candidate for the president of the United States. And we are just so delighted to have him here with us today. So thanks for being here, Ryan.
Well, it's
thank
so
you,
great.
Ryan.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Josh, as well. And hello, DC. I'm coming there next week. And so I'm looking forward to being in your neck of the woods.
Yes. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, a lot of stuff to get through. So I'm just gonna start off with something that you were quoted as saying recently. So you were quoted as saying it's time to throw out the playbook and not just run the same play with a different leader. People are ready for something new. We haven't had a candidate transcend our party since Ronald Reagan. The Republican Party doesn't have the right message. I have the right message. So what is that message?
Wow, well, so many things, but a bigger picture is that we're really broke as this country economically and then spiritually. And probably when I start thinking about, what does it take to run a new playbook for the Republican Party? What that means basically is that, we have a 40-year-old message, but the electorate has changed. And so when you look at the demographics of the United States, it's much different than it was 40 years ago. So we're still on our same platform message, and our party is very, homogenous, kind of looking a little bit more. And we're not as connecting, I believe, to minorities, to urban America, to college students. So we lost, just objectively here, 46 of the top 50 cities by population in the last election. We lost 46, we only won 46% of the vote, in the last two elections, general elections as president. And then, of course, we lost 70% of college student votes. And so we're not connected to these fast-growing urban America. We're losing big cities. I'm from Texas, so we lost Dallas, we lost Houston, San Antonio, Austin. For the first time in 65 years, we lost Fort Worth. And we're running with this same message. So what's our message? Well, it's a populist message. Let's defeat the far left. Let's, it's kind of like rile up the crowd. We stand for truth and justice, and many of these things I stand for. But at the same time, we're not connecting to hurting people. So we don't have a message for the poor. Like, what's the Republicans' message for somebody that's poor? If we want to believe that a smaller government, that a freer economy, a capitalistic economy is better than a socialist message, what is our message for somebody that's poor? And the Republicans don't have one. I mean, our message to urban America is, listen, you can do and become anything you want to be. Good luck. Call us if you need us. And so my message is, listen, we need to start diving in here. And our message to college students is just quit asking for money. That's our message to them. Quit asking for money instead of showing them how if I pay for your tuition, how that's going to hinder you and cause inflation that you're having today and likely cripple your entire future financially. Instead of diving in and going, why don't you volunteer with me in urban America? Let's get a cause together. Because right now, 1 out of 6 kids in urban America are reading at the 8th grade reading level. And whether we agree socially on everything or not, can we both agree that the poor need help and we can help them with education? We can start job training. We can prepare people, whether they're going to college or not, through vocational trades. It's thinking differently instead of just doing the same thing. So in the debate stage, we have other people wanting to run the same play. I'm a different quarterback, but I want to run the same play, quarterback over center. And I'm like, this play is not working. It will not win, and we have to change.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thanks for sharing all that. I got to ask, how did you're a pastor. You said that when we were kind of having our little pre-screen conversations. So how did you as a pastor find yourself getting in there in politics and trying to run for president of the United States? What has that been like? What is it like to essentially face these, what I would have to imagine seem like mammoth odds and candidates that are there that you feel like maybe shouldn't even be on the stage?
Well, first of all, a lot of respect for all my peers that are running and, politicians are running. It's not necessarily because they're not the candidate or whatever. But this message really came to me, Josh, and through a series of dreams 8 years ago. So I'm a pastor. I'm a businessman. I'm
Hmm.
a CEO of an investment bank. So we have about 400 employees in all the different companies we have. We own a few restaurants. We own a few other things too. But my life has been about business and ministry. I got 5 kids. I'm not a politician. So I have not grown up, wow, I want to be president one day. That's never been like this thought of mine. But about 8 years ago, I began having dreams from God about this calling that I'm doing right now. And then messages began coming to me about our country. One is this message, almost like a Joseph message economically, that something is coming that we're not ready for. And I could take 20 minutes and explain what's happening financially. When you see bank failures happen, what happened this year, those 3 bank failures were as large as 25 bank failures in 2008. And the government saying, oh, there's nothing to see here. So I see this big cultural economic problem. And then I see this spiritual problem where we're divided. And God has a lot to say about immigrants and the poor and the orphan and the widow. And our party is just kind of disjointed. For instance, the Republicans and Democrats, they don't want to come up with a plan for the border. So we're willing to let 100,000 people die of fentanyl, which drugs come across that southern border from the southern border primarily. We're willing to let 100,000 people die in the next 12 months because we disagree wholeheartedly on whether an immigrant should be able to have legal work papers or not, or how we're going to secure the border, whether we want to give a dime to do it. And so it's disgusting. It's kind of one of these things like I can't even believe that we as leaders aren't leading. And I'm calling the Republican Party to start leading again. Quit leaving immigration reform, border security to the backseat of a Democratic platform. Let's do this together. If both of you represent mindset both parties in some way, we have got to come together. These problems are so big. Republicans can't solve it alone. Neither can Democrats. And when will we quit vilifying each other and work on something together? So it's an uphill battle. I mean, I'm over here in Iowa. I've been to 64 counties. They look at me like, yeah, that's important. That's a great idea. But wow, are you sure we need to do that now? And I'm like, yes, we need to do it now. It's almost like I'm crying out in the wilderness. Yes, we need to do this now. Something's coming we're not prepared for. And everybody's just wanting to keep doing the same thing. And a few people are listening. We got three polls at 1%. National polls. We didn't make it to the debate. We missed the debate by like 8 people, but a couple of the polls were a few people short in the number of requirements the RNC wanted. But we're planning to keep plowing ahead. We met all the donor requirements, so some people are listening. So thank you for having me here, because I think there's a remnant in our country. I think there's a group of people just like yourselves that are going, "Is this it? Is this our 2 options? Is there nobody that can see through this mess and unite us to accomplish something significant?" And that's my message.
That's really cool. And I want to just touch on your faith a little bit and how it kind of ties into your potential presidency, because so we live in a pluralistic society, people of all different kinds of faith and people with no faith even. So how do you balance, leading a country with people that have, a wide array of different beliefs and different things, and make it equitable for everybody, so for instance, like in your state, actually, I mean, the bill, I don't think passed, but there was a bill to have like the 10 commandments in all the classrooms. And if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, you would think, hey, that's not bad. But if you're not a Christian, you think, well, what the heck? So how do you kind of walk that fine line?
I think it's important. I'll share a couple things first, but I think it's important that we teach our children history, and we teach our children, and it's okay to say that our founders and the reason this nation became at all was because some people were wanting the ability to have freedom, and freedom of religion was one of them. And the religion they shared was not necessarily one church or one faith, but it was a believer in the creator God that we have, Yahweh. I mean, that's just a fact. If you read all their writings, it's in our documents, it's in our Constitution. We have inalienable rights, endowed by our creator. These are things that we have, and it's just part of our history. It's okay to do that. You look at our nation's laws. Most of those a lot of them came from the 10 Commandments. There's some great laws in there. However, though, as a president, how do I connect to people? I think it's just this way. It's just love. The main message Christ shared was love each other, love your neighbor. I think we could all agree, if you were an atheist and you're agnostic and didn't believe anything that I believed, I think we could all agree that we need to help the poor or somebody struggling today. And so my message is this: really, let's let our actions show louder than our words. I'm not asking everybody to believe the same way I believe, but can we agree that when there is poverty, that we need to do something about it? But it's not just the government's job to do it. When there's a lack of education, let's start mentoring young people. One of the things I want to do is start a volunteer movement with college students and go, hey, listen, you may not agree with me anything on socially, but can you give up 5 hours a week and come help a third grader on how to read? Because I'll do that with you. And if we all did this, if you can imagine our country with hundreds of thousands of college students giving 5 hours a week to mentor a young person, it would not only change that young person's life, it would change that college student's life, and it would change the country, and it could change the world. So it's more of that message than it is a faith in a particular, religion. And then the second thing is, as part of my faith, I believe this. I believe that we're all brothers, and if I believe in God, if I really believe in God, then I believe that we're all family. And why don't we just start treating each other that way? So, everybody's got family members, and everybody's got a family member that's a little bit crazy, right? Or is it just me? But anyway,
most definitely.
You're like, I don't agree with him hardly on anything, but we can still have Christmas dinner together, kind of family member. And I may not be having breakfast with him every Monday, but, we're civil. Why can't we just be civil together? Because as family, we're all Americans, and we need to focus on that and remember that. And we actually have a lot in common. And so let's work on these things we have in common and come up with things that we share. We're all going through this financial crisis. Inflation impacts us all, whether you're right or you're left, or whether you're Christian or agnostic or atheist. Inflation hits us all. Let's fix it together. The poor are still there, whether you're atheist or whatever religion you are. Let's work on that together. My thoughts are coming up with some things that we all share, and let's work on those together.
That's so good. I was reading through your website, and I love how you've outlined your plans. And one of the things that you've talked about that I was able to see there is that, and this is an unbelievable statistic, that healthcare inflation has outpaced regular inflation by 40%. Now, is that the annual percentage growth rate by 40% a year?
That is the average annual over a 20-year period.
Holy smokes. So what specific policies do you propose, not only to control healthcare inflation, but also to ensure it aligns or falls below the rate of general inflation? Is that possible?
Well,
to get healthcare inflation to a place? Yeah,
it should be right in line with it. It certainly shouldn't be 1% above it. And if it is, it's because there's inefficiencies there. And what's there, the inefficiencies that are there are monopolies. And so the problem, if you break down healthcare into three specific areas: health insurance exchanges, the providers themselves, and then also big pharma. Those three big areas are eating away not only our personal budgets, the federal government's budget. Medicare and Medicaid is 35% of every dollar we spend out there. I mean, this money is going out by the trillions, and it's built on a fractured economic platform. The reason, I'm in Iowa today, I don't know what it's like in DC, but every state only has 2 or 3 major, sometimes 4 major insurance carriers that do most of the work. Like United Healthcare has 65 million clients. This is uncalled for. I'm in the mergers and acquisition business. I have over 5,000 competitors in my industry that I have to compete with for every client I want. This is what competition does, and we've eliminated that basically. So you have what's called an oligopoly. You've got 2 or 3 major players controlling pricing. You have to get rid of that. There's an old law that does not allow insurance companies to compete across state lines. It's 50 years old. You got to get rid of it. Number 2 is 30 years ago, I used to work for Boston Scientific. We would sell to doctors and hospitals. Right now, hospitals own 75% of the doctors in the United States of America. So they own them, meaning they work for them now, meaning they can't compete with them. They used to do small procedures for them. And now when you and I go to the doctor today, we have to desocialize it. We have to bring price transparency. If you wanted to get if all 3 of us wanted to go get an MRI today, and you called your doctor and say, I need to get an MRI, how much is it? They wouldn't be able to tell you. You'd have to shop hard to get, and if you did, you would get rates from $400 to $4,000. So what we don't have an incentive for you and I to shop. We just give people our card, and we go and we give it to them, and we ask them how much. They say, I don't know. We find out 90 days later. Listen, we don't purchase anything in the world like that except for healthcare. We don't buy cars that way, houses that way, food this way. We have no idea what it costs. We have to bring price transparency back, visibility back, and put the patient in charge again. And then with Big Pharma, what we do there in the United States of America, we give patent extensions longer than any other nation in the world. So they make all their profit off us. And basically, we are subsidizing the world in pharmaceutical drugs. And whenever we decide to stop it, then prices will come down.
That's really interesting. And it definitely resonated with me because my 9-year-old has to get an MRI every 3 months. He just had a brain tumor removed. I can't remember. Time
sorry.
It was like a flat circle at this point, but it's so true. Like we get our MRI, we get this thing in the mail from our insurance, and it's very difficult to sort of decipher. We're like, how much did we pay for that? I don't even know. Like, and
it doesn't matter. And so this is what's happening now. Private insurers, like I've got 300 employees or whatever on private insurance. I can't remember. I don't know the exact number, but for a family, it's $30,000 a year in our company to pay for private insurance. And what's happening is everybody with private insurance is subsidizing everybody else that's on the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, Medicaid, and it's about to bust. So now people are getting off of insurance and they're starting to self-fund. I have one of my executives' daughter-in-law was having a baby. It costs $12,000 to have the baby. That was the size of their deductible. So then they go, how much is it if I pay cash? And they came back to him an hour later and it's like, how about $5,000? So that inequity of $7,000, that's the waste in the system of the insurance carriers and all that. And that's why it's going to eventually break if we don't do something about it. So we just have to bring a business. I'm a businessman, so I'm not a healthcare expert, but I can look at something and go, hey, these monopolies are ruining this thing. And we have to just do the smart thing and put patients back in charge of shopping again and let us know what it costs. We're good shoppers. Let's do this the right way.
It's so true. My wife and I, the second child we had, we actually had it in our house, actually the house I'm in right now. Like we used the doula and, all kinds. I mean, it was very, very inexpensive. But it did freak me out a little bit because I'm just like, but we need a doctor, just in case. But staying in that same vein about healthcare, so universal healthcare is sort of like this term that you see thrown around a lot, kind of from my side of the political aisle. So I'm curious, like, how would you propose making, quality healthcare accessible to all Americans without like overburdening the taxpayer?
We need to go back to the way we did it 70 years ago. I speak with some of these old doctors sometimes, and I go, Ryan, I used to just call my patients, and he said, I would just ask them questions, and they would tell me, and he said, usually they self-diagnose themselves. Right now, doctors don't have relationships with patients anymore. What's going to break the system is going to be doctors leaving these hospital systems and actually getting relationships with their patients again, and probably telemedicine, other ways. There's so many cheaper ways to do healthcare. 90% of the stuff we need, we don't need to go to a hospital or a doctor, a big clinic to figure out. If we actually had a relationship with our doctor, we could probably do a telephone call, a Zoom call, talk to them. So many new alternatives are going to crop up like this, just like we see innovations happen today. And it's so important. You can kind of almost think of the Uberization of healthcare. What did Uber do? It broke the monopolies of the yellow cab systems. It put drivers in charge. Drivers could be rated. You need to be able to know your doctor, rate your doctor. How good are they? Are they connecting? And doctors will actually want to do this. We had 110,000 doctors leave the profession because they became basically administrators of the hospital instead of doing what they were called to do, which is be in patients' lives and help them. So I think there's going to be a demand for this back. And I think it's just easier than what we think. I'm not saying there's not real issues. I don't mind the government helping those that are in need. But right now, this balloon system is about to break, and we have to get back to what makes sense. Eliminating the 2 and 3 middlemen that are there, because they're all there. Insurance, pharmaceutical, there's lots of middlemen involved. We have to remove those.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Given that you're in ministry, right, which I totally get, and I think it's awesome. I love ministry. I'm in it myself, but also I've had this experience over the last several years of doing this podcast with Will, where I reach and talk to people that are very, very, very different than myself and don't agree on very much at all. Like even Will kids about how much we disagree, but we probably agree on more than we disagree on in general in life. Will doesn't think so, but I'm sticking to that, probably. But obviously, when you have to work with other people, you have to compromise potentially even on certain values, certain principles. I guess my question for you is, how do you maintain and plan to maintain the integrity of your core beliefs, the things that are essentially non-negotiable, while being able to still reach across the aisle and find mutual understanding? I guess another way to say it, what things are non-negotiable for you in this process?
Well, there's a lot of things that probably that fall in that area. But at the end of the day, I'm not running. I'm a pastor, but this is presidency of the United States of America, and a lot of the cultural issues that I stand on and believe, whether that be about life issues or the what biblical definition of what marriage is. Some of these things are states are figuring out. The government's already decided on marriage for gay marriage. I will disagree personally on a lot of things, but I'm actually called to lead, and I really believe we're supposed to lead at a higher level to where we're bringing people to a place where what we need to honor what's in the Constitution. I would fight for certain things, like for instance, even on certain things like life here today. I want to create a culture of life. So how could I help lead this? Well, there's going to be no significant legislation that's passed nationally because when Roe v. Wade was overturned, nobody's heart changed on this matter. Nobody's heart was overturned when Roe v. Wade was overturned. So if I want to help lead this change of movement in America to where we're honoring life, and I do believe that. I do believe, I mean, we honor life as a country. I've been to Florida before, and on a beach, if you disturb a turtle nest with an egg of a turtle, an unboiled turtle, you could get thrown in jail for a year, have tens of thousands of dollars in fines. So we as a nation actually we recognize the potential inside that egg. And so there's principles that we have that I don't understand, but if I want to open up people's eyes to start thinking about this, what should we do? I think we need to do more for women in times of distress. I think we need to educate teenagers and at all levels more that abortion is not contraception. That there's another thought to this, and we can change the culture of life with having more adoption readily accessible here, more affordable. The foster care movement that's around. One of the things that comes to my heart is no child should ever age out of foster care without having the ability, or at least the thought that they could have had a home, a permanent home. I believe if we did these other things, we held men accountable. We started teaching young men early on about sex outside of marriages, the consequences of that, what that means, your responsibilities. Why should it just be the responsibility of a woman? This is a mutual responsibility effort. Every decision you make has a consequence to it. Start changing the culture of life over time. Would there be a consensus that would be different than it is today? I would certainly hope so. But right now it's in the state's hands. And so each state is figuring that out. But I would try and lead a narrative of let's change the culture of life and let's see what awakens in our hearts, because nothing's going to change until the consensus changes.
Yeah. How do you, I guess on the topic of life specifically, so I'm pro-choice. I do believe that abortion or the decision of abortion should be left up to a woman. And that's just my own personal belief. But having talked to a number of different people, it seems like we're having the wrong discussion when it comes to abortion. It's not so much they want to kill your baby, or they want to deny me my rights. It's the bigger question is, where do people think life began? Because some religions believe that life begins, basically once the baby's born. Others believe it begins at conception. So how do you balance all these different beliefs when you're thinking about proposing legislation or, making decisions about this stuff?
This is what every state is grappling with. So, I believe this, and as a Christian, that will that life begins in the womb. That it begins at conception. The Bible says that early on. The book of Jeremiah, it says that I knew you before you were ever born. While you're in your mother's womb, I called you. He named him. So he knew. There are so many parallel scriptures like that, even about Jesus and John the Baptist in the New Testament. You could look that up. There's life that's there. So, I think we all know it to be true as well. The question really in our conscience is, when do we really want to acknowledge that? I think that if there was an accident, or if there was a murder, if there was, we'll call it something horrible that happened, or somebody tried to attack a woman that was pregnant and the child died, I think we all know that there's that's a possibility of that should be a murder. I mean, I think there's at some level in our hearts we know this. So then you're asking a question. Well, when did that child then become valid? Was it 30 weeks, 26 weeks, 24, 10? And you're asking a question that I think everybody's going to end up having to ask God and themselves. And I respect women, and I think we have to do a lot more to care for them in a time of distress. And I want you to know, I'm not judging any woman. Women that want to make this choice, I understand that. Abortion's impacted so many people's lives. It's impacted my life, family, so many ways. It's a deeper issue, and it's hard. And I don't know that everybody will ever agree on it. So how do you get there legislatively? I don't know that I know, other than keep sharing love, keep sharing truth, keep sharing with people that we care, keep sharing with women. A lot of women choose to have an abortion because of finances. I met with a group of people in Dallas, and they were on the board of a Christian, crisis pregnancy center that tried to encourage women to have their baby. And I asked them how many women would choose to have their child if maybe they had a $10,000 grant or $5,000 or some number to help pay for their first year. He just told me it was untold. And I think some projections are maybe it's a third of the children. So many women are facing an issue where it's just financial. Could we do more? I think we could do more. So I would try and do more to show that we care, show that we help. I would do less judging and show that we care more and try and change hearts.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we had Abby Johnson on the program, I think, last year, and she's very pro-life, and her and I may not agree politically, but she does actually have a lot of things in the organization that she runs that tries to help pregnant women to support themselves financially. I mean, she'll get them cars and all kinds of other stuff, which I just thought was pretty amazing. But in your view, if you think that life begins at conception, would you, as president, push to, get, this unborn child like a social security number, so that way they can actually be recognized by the state, by the government, by what have you?
No, I don't think that's what comes to my mind. I mean, I've never thought about that. I think more than ever, it's now, you're asking some hard questions about culture and about life and deep embedded things now that have been in our culture for decades, and it's moving and it's changing. This is something you're talking about the heart of people. I'm not looking to assign a social security number at conception. I think what I'm looking is to change people's thoughts about life. I mean, why is it that there's fines and people could spend years in jail for protecting or harming or inhibiting a turtle egg? Well, it's because we value it. Why don't we value it more? And I think that's another question I wouldn't mind asking. Don't you think we should value this child more? And why don't we? I have a member on my team whose mother attempted to abort her with a pill, and she suffers today because of that. She's got health issues because of that. I've got one of my dear friends was born with no arms and no legs, and he is now one of the most sought after speakers across the globe. He's influenced more people for the good than almost many people that I know, and so there's a lot of people that think, okay, well, what use is a life? Well, it's more than we know. And I don't know that we always have that right to choose, wow, is this life relevant? So if you put I have a challenge with somebody saying, I have complete authority over this life when I think God created it. So I would just try and influence that more. I think it's got to be hearts and minds. Well, it's not going to be because I made it happen or a law happen.
I appreciate that answer, Ryan, because it's a super complicated issue, of course, because you have all these different levels of definition. You have philosophical analysis of what life is. You have biblical analysis of what life is, trying to understand that. And it gets very complicated very quickly. And any kind of black and white statement about it tends to disguise the nuance that's really there. And I appreciate your sensitivity, even thinking about, like, you want to encourage life, and I love that. I want to move on just a little bit, thinking about life, even thinking about the connection with the adoption issue, but which leads to then the question I actually want to get to, which is about religious liberties. So I know that you are really, from your words and from your website, focused on making sure that adoption is championed. But one of the things that we will face, and that every organization will face, and every religious organization will face, is someone coming to adopt a child that is in a same-sex marriage, either between men or between women, or in some kind of trans, gender relationships within the marriage, and the internal struggle that's there, or the internal, identification they have. How do you plan, or do you see yourself navigating some of these really complicated, really difficult issues, even particularly on religious liberty, of how do we figure out how to allow people to oppose, say, giving a child to a same-sex couple on the basis of the organization's religious beliefs? Should that be allowed? Should that be canceled? How does that relate to the religious liberty struggles that we see? Because this is happening. It's been happening for the last 10 years, and it's not going away, this fight. Right. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Well, so there's two parties primarily, and really three, I guess, in an adoption case. There's the mother and or parents that are giving up their child for adoption. There's an agency of some sort, and then there's the parent. And so, when you look at this, we adopted our fifth child, so from South Korea. So, we went to an agency, and I believe people have the choice. And so, if I'm giving my child up for adoption, maybe I have choices. Maybe if I want to give them up to an adoption that has a faith-based initiative that would prefer that the parents be, a traditional heterosexual couple, or Christian or whatever, then I think that parent has the right to say, well, I would like my child to be adopted in that type of family. And certainly there's different types of adoption agencies. There's some that are, agnostic, and there's some that have faith-based, and then there's parents. And so I think that there's probably options for all these. I would think that if I'm a parent and I'm giving I want to adopt a child through a Christian organization, or for one that somebody wanted there to be a couple that was faith-based, or a heterosexual couple, then I think there's room there for whatever the people's desires are. I do not think, though, that if I'm a faith-based organization that people are giving their child to, and they specifically want the parents to be a mom and a dad, then somebody should have the overright to impede their desires of that parents when they wanted to give that child up for adoption, if that makes sense. That was a little roundabout way. Does that make sense, Josh? I think there's I think there's options. Just
there's
like
options.
Church. So do I think gay marriage is legal? Do I think the government should make me marry gay people? No. And so there's plenty of other places for them to get married, is my point. So.
Right. I got you.
Yeah. Switching gears here to foreign policy. So, we are now, I think, well past a year of being in Ukraine, or not being in Ukraine, of supporting Ukraine against their battle of the Russian invasion. So I'd love to kind of get your take on where do you fall on our support with Ukraine?
Well, this is a very, very challenging topic. But basically, right now, first of all, I really believe that as America, we should be defending freedom. So, at my core of who I am and the core of who America is, I'm never for letting somebody like Putin just run right over Eastern Europe, rebuild the Soviet bloc. I believe in standing for Ukraine. However, I'm not one of those people that believes in an unending war. So there's two groups really, and I'm in neither of them. One is support Ukraine forever, regardless of the cost, regardless of the time, and the other is let's run out of Ukraine now. So we've seen a couple candidates going, I would leave there today, So I'm neither one of those people. I would support them. I'd likely support them a little bit more. I mean, right now, President Biden isn't really giving them enough, I think, weapons to actually win. It's kind of like enough for this war of attrition. I might do it a little bit differently. But at the same time, I would be meeting with Putin right now to bring a diplomatic end to this war. I'd be bringing NATO leaders together. I'd be able to show Putin that there's other ways for him to succeed other than taking over Ukraine. I'd try and reintroduce him to the international community in a different way, and possibly through reducing sanctions, investments, opportunities for their people to succeed and have prosperity. The overriding vision that I would have is, listen, we need to bring peace, security, and prosperity to everyone. And it's time to start bringing those talks to the table. And I would look to end this war as soon as possible.
How about your thoughts on China and specifically, their mistreatment of the Uyghurs? That's a marginalized group that we don't hear too much in the news recently. But a friend of the show, William Nee, just wrote an article recently about the Uyghurs, and I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, we have to begin to really decouple ourselves from China. We need to be diversifying our supply chains really to other nations that are all over. But when you look all over, it almost doesn't matter where you go. There's mistreatment of people. There are slaves in Pakistan. There's slaves. There are indentured servants at large brick factories. There's movements actually to help people out of slavery in some of these areas. We've been a part of that personally and privately in our church as well. There's nations that we might say, hey, let's partner with, and it almost doesn't matter where I go. There's racism, there's difficult matters everywhere. So I'm not trying to make light of that. I really believe that every nation that we are major partners with, there should be some levels of humanitarian rights that we hold people accountable to, or we simply move on. China's already moved on from us. They're the top trade partner in 120 other nations. They're loaning money to other nations. We're kind of on the sidelines because we're so broke financially. They're loaning money. We're borrowing money. We need to diversify out of them. I'd be encouraging the Americans, hey, it's time for us to look differently than buying our same shoes, phones, everything else from China, because there's a responsibility we have to a humanitarian crisis all over the world. So I would try and lead with discussions that way, lead trade relationships that way. We need to broaden our diversification. When we do, we'll be better off. And when we're stronger financially, this is what I'm telling America. When we're strong, right now, Xi Jinping would not even return the phone call of President Biden today. 20 years ago, I went to China. They were loving investment. I mean, they were like, hey, invest with us. Now they won't even take his phone call at the end of the day. The reason is because they see how we're treating the US dollar. We're not respecting it. They're trying to remove our status as the world's reserve currency. So they're just kind of moving around us. When we're strong again financially, they will pay attention to us. And I believe with other things that sanctions and our leadership across the globe, they would change some of these ways that they're treating people today.
That's so good. So you aim to maintain the most effective military in the world. How do you reconcile this with the global push for peace and diplomacy, especially, I said global, but really like Americans don't have necessarily the taste for war that maybe Americans have had in the past at some level. So what's your view on military interventions versus diplomatic solutions? At what point, Trump basically tweeted that if, the little man from North Korea tries to do anything, this is literally what he said, right? Something along these lines, I'm paraphrasing. He'll rain down like fire and hell from above. So that was his foreign policy. And it sent the guy stopped
Specifically,
talking.
his
So
red
it kind of
button was
worked.
bigger than his red button. His red button was bigger.
That's
if I
right.
remember.
Yes, it was a bigger red button. So what do you think about that?
So I believe, first of all, we have to start being financially prudent, but I do believe we need to continue defense spending and be a part of something significant. Now, the reason we can do that, though, cut some other areas and still be financially smart, it's called pruning. We've never pruned anything in the U.S. government. So, if you're a farmer, you got a tree here, you recognize what dead limbs need to go. We've never seen a dead limb in the U.S. government that needed to go. So, but as a percentage of GDP, and growth, the defense spending has not grown like our other spending has. If you put up Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, and then defense spending flattens out as a percentage of growth compared to every other social program we have. So we actually need to continue that to be strong. Unfortunately, we're in a day where you need to be strong, so I think there's strength with diplomacy. Some nations today, China is really building a lot of ships right now. They're trying to outpace us and have in many ways. We have to stay strong with our defense. But over time, I'm leading a different way. I'm not leading with just, crazy threats and trying to get people to back off and are trying to, we have to lead different discussions today. But at the same time, we have to have a strong hand. So our enemies today know when we're strong and know when we're weak. And in fact, when Biden was weak and he ran out of Afghanistan, that's the reason Putin moved when he did. So there's some matter to the leadership of the president. There's something that matters about our defense, our abilities. When we lost our bases there in Afghanistan and that surrounding areas of where we could have a military base, when we left there, we also left a strategic position. So we're weaker there now. I would lead differently than that. But at the same time, it's with a message of diplomacy and strength. But do we need to have a strong military? Today we do.
At the time that we're recording this, Florida just saw, a pretty significant hurricane hit their western coast. We've had record temperatures all around the country, which whether or not that was all a result of climate change, I'll leave to the smarter people than I. But it's definitely kind of sparked this conversation within our country. But I'm curious on your thoughts about climate change and if you do believe that it's man-made, like what do we do about it? Like how do we take care of it?
One just died and one just picked up. It's
okay. It's okay. We can edit all this.
Wow. Okay, that's perfect. So, first of all, I mean, climate change. It's not that it's not real. It's been around forever. It is real. But it's also very predictable. I'm a Christian. In the Bible, it talks about climate change and towards the end times, and so it's always going to be there. Is a lot of it man-made? Should we get rid of some things that have contributed to it? Well, I mean, at the same time, energy has saved countless people's lives, and so in fact, the number of people's lives that are saved is multiple times better because we have energy today that also contributes, to carbon emissions, and so this is a difficult matter for the world. I believe that we should be energy independent. I believe that also we should do it as clean as possible. I'm for nuclear energy. I'm for renewable energy. I'm for doing everything we can do to be as efficient as we can, while we're still not counting on, Iran and Russia to be more efficient and cleaner than we are. So if we abandon some of these principles, what we're saying is, well, we're not going to do it, but let's let Russia do it. I mean, are we really going to trust Russia to do a better job than we are? And so this is a fine balance we have to face. And I believe they're all real issues. Some of the things we're facing are, like you said, there's something, there's either smarter people at play, but I think it's climate change is real. But at the same time, we have to know where we're at as a nation, and we can't get out of energy. We have to be in energy, but we have to do it more efficiently all the time.
That's so good. So you mentioned civic education, upping the ante on civic education. How does that happen? Does that, like the civic involvement, encouraging our youth to become more involved, volunteering, things like that?
I lost you.
How do we do that? Is that something integrated in the curriculum? How do you propose that we make the needed changes in our education system, and particularly with our students and their civic involvement in American
So
politics?
we broke up, Josh, just a little bit in there. I heard education, then you froze on me for a while. Can you repeat that real quick?
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, what I was saying is that we have the education system. Of course, you want to improve the education system. Part of what I saw to be your policy was an increase in civic education to encourage and even push more civic involvement from our youth, the minors and youth in America. How do you see that going? Do you see that put into curriculum in schools, volunteerism, things like that? What needs to change?
Well, okay. So if I just look at it holistically, we first of all have to assess how are we doing? How is education in America? Is it good? Is it bad? And I would contend that we've gotten way off track in the last several decades. Many years ago when I was growing up, we were one of the top in education. Where we sure thought we were, but right now we're not even the top 20. I believe when you look at math, science, and reading as a combination, and we're not really preparing our kids to compete at the global stage the way we should. Somebody asked me when I first started running here in Iowa, Ryan, how can we bring jobs back in America? They're like, what's going to be the real impulse? And I'm like, well, I can do some reshoring, some tax incentives, and we can hopefully bring some manufacturing back. Or wow, long term, what we really need to do? Create brilliant kids. We need smart kids that are competitive on the landscape because people are outsourcing jobs, technical jobs, computer programming jobs. I have a software engineering firm. We have about 50 employees here in the United States, and then we have about 40, 50 contractors. About 20 of them are from Ukraine. I asked our president, I was like, why do you hire people from Ukraine? Is it because they're cheaper? He goes, no, it's because they're awesome. They're good, and they work hard. So we got to get this work hard, good, thought process movement back in America. So how do we do that? Well, right now our education system is horrible. Just assessing it, 1 out of 6 Black children in urban America are reading at the 8th grade reading level. Only 6 out of 10, regardless of race in suburbs, are reading at the 8th grade reading level. We can change that. We have to get propaganda out of schools. We got to stop this, whatever we're doing, teaching whatever we're teaching that's taken up the news of the decade for the last 2 years, and start teaching people to read again. Math, science. While China is teaching STEM, our kids are on TikTok. So we've got to figure this out. So what I would do is start a volunteer movement with college students. Let's start giving some time to teach kids, mentor them. Many people follow their mentors. If there's a broken home family problem in America, which there is, that's inhibiting a lot of kids from being able to learn because they don't have a mom or dad at home. They're at 3 o'clock going, hey, get your homework done. Let me see that done. I got 5 kids. We have to do that with our kids. We got to say, no, show me the work. Let's go through it. Not, I did it. Because we don't, you know what? I love my kids, but we don't believe them when they say it's done. We just like, okay, I love you, but I don't believe you. Let's show me anyway. So a mentor can help people with that. College students can be in part of after school programs. They're all over major cities. I've seen them in Chicago. I've seen them here in Des Moines. They're in Dallas. It makes a difference. There's after school programs that when they go through them in Chicago, they have a 40% higher graduation rate than everyone that doesn't go through it because it's a mentor, somebody spending time with them. I want to lead a vision and a discussion that this is not government. This is private America owning their city. So this is my vision. And is own your city. My granddad in his last few years of life, my dad bought him a little house in the north side of Texas, and he lived in a small community about 2,000 people, and he was kind of an ornery old man. He was 75. He died when he was 85. And but he went to every sporting event, everything you can imagine. He was the number one fan in that school. And then he would hit me up and you up if he knew you, everybody up for some money to give these kids scholarships. And so he did this every year, $200, $500, $1,000, whatever. But at his funeral, in 2008, when I went to it, you couldn't find a parking space anywhere near there. And the reason was for 10 years, all these kids that graduated this high school, they came back and they went to his funeral. And when I walked into his house, there was just dozens of posters hung up on his wall saying, "We love you, Doc. We love you. Thank you for caring for us." Just so many things. And I thought, you know what? You know what he did? He just did what he could do. He just owned his city. And so I have this thought for America. Do for one what you'd want to do for all. You and I can't change the problem of America. We and I can't change the problems of DC, or I'm from Dallas. But you know what we can do? We can influence one or two people's lives. And what if we led a movement to where we all did that? We could change the world.
That's really cool. Well, I have a couple of audience questions to ask you because so we have a Facebook group that kind of focuses on the topics that we talk about and the guests, and so we reached out to them. We said, hey, we're going to have you on the show. What are some questions you want us to ask? So they gave us just a few. So I can't ask you all of them because this is a PG show. But the first question is, what do you plan to do differently that current front runners are already doing?
Differently. First of all, I want to balance the budget. Neither one of the candidates on stage talked about this one thing that we have to do, and that's really quit spending more money than we're bringing in. And actually, I put together a plan to do it. So I have a 7-year plan for us to get there. If we don't do that, our children are going to be set up for an expansionary inflation. Right now, it's about costs about $900 more a month to buy a $400,000 house than it did 2 years ago. Everybody is spending, whether you bought a house or not, about $700 more a month in rent or mortgages or gas than they were just 2 years ago. So we have a plan to stop this inflationary cycle. We have to. And I actually put a plan together to do it. Number two, I would desocialize. Not one person mentioned healthcare. Not one person on that stage said that, and healthcare is eating away our economy. It's going to be impossible to balance the budget if we don't do something with healthcare. I would desocialize, demonopolize healthcare. I would put it on a competitive landscape again. And then I would challenge the Republican Party, which nobody mentioned at all, to start diving into urban America. Right now we lost, like I said earlier, 46 of these top 50 cities. 90% of people in urban America are voting Democrat. Well, let's dive into them with a new message that we care, that we want to help them with education. We want to start job training movements. We want to help prepare them in a career. If they're not going to go to college, and they don't need to, but can't they have a career? And we can help them do that. That's not the government's job to do that. That's our job to do that. Let's own it. Let's get private corporations to start building community centers where we're teaching trades, teach people how to work and how to have a work ethic again. So I would do that. And then lastly, I would have a bipartisan plan to secure the border. We mentioned that briefly. We have people that don't want to do anything on the border because it doesn't agree holistically with their 100% plan. I believe Democrats and Republicans should get together, secure the border, but stop human trafficking, stop fentanyl from coming in, and actually have a workforce registration with some of the immigrants that are here, the ones we need here and working here. We should have a better plan than we have today.
That's awesome. The second question, we talked a little bit about the climate, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. So the question is, what should we do about climate chaos and nuclear weapons proliferation?
Well, obviously, I would love to see a day where nuclear weapon proliferation was halted and stopped completely. That's going to take something in an era and a day that we're not in today. I would certainly want to keep Iran from being able to do that. This climate issue is big. Nuclear energy is important, and I think probably everybody could see that that's handled well is really important to our country. But it's a movement of leading the nations of the world to think differently about how to prosper. Right now, some of these communist nations just think, well, the only way I can prosper is to take over new territory. China, I need to take over Taiwan, or Russia, I need to take over Ukraine, there's other ways that we can have fairness, we can have equity, we can have a global work environment that people can succeed. And I would try and really lead that movement.
That's awesome. So last of the audience questions, if elected president, would you pardon Trump? Should he be convicted? And I just want to note that I saved our only Trump question at the end because I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about him. So would you pardon him?
Well, I guess that's assuming he was received a conviction for those things, which that's in question whether he would. So if that happened and he did, and if the indictments were specific to what I see today, when I saw the Durham report come down and they admitted that the FBI had blown it and that it was, political in nature and a waste of time. And then a month later, they come out with all these slew of indictments. It looks largely political. I tell people this. I likely would, of course. A president of the United States doesn't need to be, unless he sold this, confidential information to Russia or China and made some money on the side. He's not going to be in prison for moving things from his living room to his bathroom. So some of the issues are more difficult, but likely so.
All right, great. So last, I have just a few more lightning round questions that I'm going to shoot off at you, and then we will conclude. So here's our lightning round session. So Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out?
Chick-fil-A.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Bethel or Hillsong? Okay. Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Team Edward or Team Jacob? Never mind, pass. King James or NIV?
What's that? Say it again.
King James or NIV?
NIV.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I think you passed. I wasn't really scoring, but
thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Ryan, for coming by and chatting with us. This was a lot of fun, and it was good just getting a chance to know you. And where can people learn more about you and what you're doing?
Thank you very much, Will and Josh. Binkley2024.com. Follow us, hit us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you are, and follow us. Share this message with people. We have to poll at 3% to get this next debate. And it's going to happen through just movements like this, sharing with people, letting people know there's an alternative out there they're not seeing today. And we really want to be able to share that. So just liking and sharing it with other people. It's a new voice for America. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And good luck on the rest of your campaign. I'm sure it's really tiring.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's everything. It's as easy as they told me it'd be. So it's no problem.
Awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you so much. And we will see you everybody next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.